Welcome to the Zweig Letter Podcasts, putting architectural, engineering, planning, and environmental consulting guru Mark Zweig and his team of experts straight talk in your ear. Mark has more than 30 years of experience helping AEP and environmental firms thrive. And these podcasts deliver his invaluable management, industry, client, and HR advice directly to you, free of charge. The Zweig Letter and the Zweig Letter Podcasts let you develop professionally, wherever you are.
Hey everyone, and thank you for joining Zweig Group Media and the Zweig Letter exclusive interview series. With almost 25 years of continuous coverage of the design industry, the Zweig Letter is a constant and an ever-changing marketplace. We are bringing you some of the best and brightest minds that our industry has to offer. Today, I'm pleased to welcome Tracy Eaves, who heads up our Valuation Consulting group here at Zweig Group. Tracy, it's so great to have you on the Zweig Letter Podcast finally. And why don't you just, for the audience, for the part of our audience that doesn't know who you are, why don't you tell us exactly, introduce yourself, tell us a little bit about what you do here at Zweig Group, and tell us a little bit about your background.
Certainly. Thank you, Randy. I appreciate the invitation. My name is Tracy Eaves. I head up the Valuation Consulting group for Zweig Group. I have been working with the company since 2010. I have a background in business valuation. I have been in the industry since 2000. I have earned a Certified Business Appraiser designation from the Institute of Business Appraisers. I have a Certified Valuation Analyst designation from the National Association of Certified Valuators and Analysts. I have a Business Certified Appraiser designation with the International Society of Business Appraisers, and I also have a Machinery and Equipment Appraisal designation that I earned through the NEBB Institute.
Wow.
In addition to that, I have an undergraduate degree from Louisiana Tech University, and I earned my MBA through the University of Arkansas.
Okay. All right. Great. That's right. You did some time here in Arkansas, right? How long were you here?
10 years.
Okay. Great. That's awesome. Do you miss Fayetteville?
I do miss Fayetteville. Fayetteville is just one of those little gems in the world, and it is just a spectacular place.
Oh, that's awesome. That's right. You came and visited with us a couple of weeks ago when we had our annual retreat, and it was certainly good to have you physically here in the office to be with us. And for those of you that are listening to the podcast and don't know that we've got several leaders within this organization that work remotely and work in different parts of the country. And that actually really allows Zweig Group to bring on the best and brightest talent, regardless of location. And Tracy is certainly an example of that here on this team. And so, again, I'm finally glad that I was able to corral you to commit to doing this podcast. And, I think one of the simple things that we do on the Zweig Letter Podcast, and specifically for these interview series, is that we try to go a little deeper in some of the services that we offer on the consulting side of things, and talk about all of the different things that we're capable of doing. But more than that, also giving the listeners just some real world ways to apply consulting to the way that they run their business on a daily basis. And so it's kind of cool just to have you talking about valuation. And I'm sure a lot of people have questions. We've had M&A team members on here, Jamie Claire Kaiser and Phil Kyle, and we'll obviously have others on in the near future. But today is Valuation Day, and today is Tracy Eaves Day on this podcast. So I'm excited to have you on here. So why don't we do this? Why don't we jump right in? Because I'm sure people have some questions, and we get so many inquiries about valuations, as I know you do. And so, how many valuations do you think you've done over the years, just in terms of your experience?
Oh, goodness. I would estimate, Randy, that I have done more than 500 valuations.
Wow. Okay. And then when people think of valuations, I know sometimes people think of how like an appraiser appraises a house, but I know it's so much different when you're talking about a breathing entity like a business. How do you take all that you know and apply it to the valuation process?
Well, the valuation process is it's a very specific activity, and I named off my certifications earlier in the introduction, and there's good reason for that, and it's because business valuation it's a complex process because there are so many moving pieces and parts to a business entity that every one of them is individual in nature, and the characteristics of one firm, even if you had two firms sitting side by side, they both offered the same services. They both had very close in terms of revenue range. But if you look at those two businesses side by side, the characteristics of those businesses are unique and individual to each one of them. So it's very difficult to throw everybody into one pot and say, well, everybody's the same, so therefore, the valuation process is should be fairly simple, cut and dried, straightforward, and that's not the case. Just simply because we have to take into account all of those individual business characteristics that could either detract from value or could potentially add value to a firm. In the process, in talking with business owners and going through the valuation process, we are evaluating, really the company from A to Z, and we're looking at everything from the financial performance of the firm, but we are also looking at how does that firm benchmark against industry guidelines, and is that firm an above average performer? Is that firm kind of in that middle range, or is that firm performing at the low end of the range? And then we, try to answer those questions. What are some of the driving factors as to why that is? Are there maybe personal expenses that have been entered in on financial statements that we need to remove so that we have a more true, pure business performance level? Or what is it that's causing that's causing that performance? So we're looking at that. We're looking at the management team of the firm. We're looking at other characteristics such as, the backlog of a firm, and, what does that look like? We're looking at the next level of leadership in the firm, and what does that look like? We get into asking questions and exploring, the client base of the firm, and asking about the geography of where the firm operates. Is it typically a fairly local firm? Is it regional in nature? Does it have a national footprint? And from the perspective of clients, we're looking at firms and we're looking at the breakdown of potential or particular clients. Does the firm have a huge reliance on one particular client, and has that been in effect for a few years? We have seen over the years working with companies in the industry. I have actually seen firms that they range. I have firms that are very diverse in nature, and if I look at their top 5 clients for the last 5 years, the diversity of the firm is such that there's no reliance pattern there. On the other hand, I have firms that ask for the top 5 clients for the last 5 years, and there's one particular client that shows up over and over and over, and it's 50+% of the revenue of the company. So when you look at even just from the perspective of the client concentration issue, if both firms were identical with the exception of that one issue, Firm A looks very different from Firm B in terms of its risk profile, because if that client that is 50% of the revenue happens to go away, then we have a business that looks much different than it would had the client stayed. So there's all kinds of I guess moving pieces and parts that we explore in this process of learning about the business and understanding how it functions, and more of the sometimes it's learning about the corporate culture also helps to somewhat define how the company actually operates from a from financial perspective. So it is a process. People, like you said earlier, people do think about sometimes business appraisal should be as simple as hiring an appraiser to come, value your home. But it is a very different process, much more complex. We dive a lot deeper into, some of those issues that I brought forward. And it's a necessary part of the process to really be able to develop that independent opinion of fair market value.
Yeah. So basically what you're telling me, which again, there's so much information here. I want to start to try to unpack this, but what you're telling me is if I'm running a design firm and my cousin is a great accountant, I can't probably, I don't think I should necessarily rely on him to help me come up with an accurate valuation of my organization if his area of expertise isn't the fundamental ability to value a company.
Overall, I would say that that's a fair statement. Certainly there are those accountants out there in the marketplace that have had exposure to business valuation, but I will tell you, that it is an area of consulting that if you don't ride that bike every day, you kind of forget. So, it's if you're not in this world every day, we've got a lot of fast-paced changes that happen in our industry, and if you're not keeping up with that, it's very easy to fall behind fairly quickly. So, from the perspective of having valuation designations that from various organizations, it does a couple things. One, it requires us to operate from a set of professional standards that we have to follow in our valuation engagements. And secondly, we have to maintain those valuation designations. So, for example, I have to have continuing education to maintain every one of my business valuation designations, and that requires me to have anywhere between 20 and 30 hours of continuing education every year to meet those requirements. So if you have somebody sitting in an accounting firm where they're doing mostly accounting work, while that person may be very bright, articulate, smart, and have a base knowledge, they may be missing part of the picture simply because this profession does require you to really stay on top of developing issues along the way.
Okay. All right. Well, no, that certainly makes sense. And I'm just, I'm sitting here, and so with these continuing education credits, is that per designation, or is that 20 to 30 hours in general that you do a year, or would that be for each of your designations?
Yeah, each designation will require 20 to 30 hours of continuing education every year to comply. Yes.
Okay. Well, I mean, I think that's important in and of itself because again, they wouldn't require constant updating if it wasn't an area that is so important. And of course, when it comes to valuing a firm, there's nothing to play with here. What are some of the common reasons that a firm will seek out a valuation?
Well, in the engineering, architecture, environmental consulting industry that we work in, I would say that a majority of the valuations are for corporate planning and ownership transition planning are the two primary purposes for valuation. There are those occasions that I will see, I do work for clients for other purposes, such as may get into a litigation issue. It might be for the initiation of an employee stock ownership plan. It might be for a divorce. And there are some other reasons as well. It might be an SBA financing purpose that we will do evaluation for. But I would say that those are fewer and further between. A majority of what we're doing is for ownership transition planning and corporate planning purposes. I have clients that will do a valuation update every single year, and they're doing that for a lot of different reasons. But in a lot of cases there is multiple owners in the firm. They all want to stay on top of their, their value development and looking at the value acceleration that they are able to create. So they will do an annual update.
Okay. Wow. All right. So corporate planning, ownership transition planning. There are obviously a multitude of reasons why a firm would seek you out to have you help them out. So just walk us through, just kind of give us just the highlight of the valuation process. What do firms need to provide? How long does it take them to prepare usually? And what should a firm expect if they've never obtained a valuation either in a while or ever, if for that matter?
Okay. Generally, the first step in the process is to get in contact with me. I like to set aside time so that I have time to focus on, a client call. So generally, we'll set up a time to talk. And, that initial conversation is really about the need and the purpose of the valuation. So, for example, I will get a phone call from a potential client, and they will say, I am the 100% owner of my firm. I am kind of in that mode of thinking about retirement, or what am I going to do with my firm? I'm really kind of torn because I have thoughts about ownership transition planning in transitioning the ownership of my firm to the next level of leadership. But I'm also thinking about, what if I could sell this firm in an outside sale, more on the merger acquisition side of the equation. So it's important to have those discussions about, the firm owners and what their intentions are, and what is the purpose of the valuation, because that helps us to frame the scope of work and what needs to be accomplished. So once that first phone call has been made and we have that discussion, then I will develop a proposal that will review the scope of work that we discussed, the valuation date, for the valuation, and get into the other information that that we include in our proposals, background, time frame, all that sort of thing. Once the proposal has been issued to a client, then if they sign that turns into our engagement agreement. We ask the client to provide a 50% retainer upon signing the proposal. Once we have received that proposal and the retainer in the office, at that point I will issue our business valuation questionnaire and document request list. The questionnaire is in a Word format, and it's designed to collect a lot of background information on the firm. So we go into everything from, provide a brief, write-up of history of the company. We ask information around management, salaries, benefits, that sort of thing. We ask a lot of questions around marketing. We ask questions around client base, the industries in which the firm operates, the type of clients that the firm has. We get into questions about, whether or not the firm leases or owns the real estate, and those types of questions. So we want a full complement of background information, because that helps us to have a baseline in which to work from, so that when we get into looking at the documentation that comes from the document request list, which is typically, we will ask you for 5 years of financial statements on an accrual basis. We also like to take a look at the same 5 years of tax returns for the firm, backlog report, accounts receivable report, accounts payable report. We get into any kind of a buy-sell agreement that might exist in the firm. We will look at other things if they're necessary, such as if there has been any litigation issues that we need to be aware of. We might need some documentation around that. We like to look at the depreciation schedule for the firm's assets that are on the asset schedule, and we will ask for that type of information. We like bios on management. We also like to see an organization chart. So I would say overall that's kind of the initial information request. Once all of that comes into the office, then we will get started with our process. And what I like to do is I like to sit down with all of that information and review it in whole. And I will then take the financial statements and I'm going to spread them into our analysis model. And I like to have an opportunity to do that and do the benchmarking of the firm against industry guideline data, just to kind of see where the firm sits. And from that process, I generally am going to develop a fairly extensive list of questions that I have or that I want to understand more about. So at that point, I will schedule what I refer to as the management interview. And the management interview is really designed to dig deeper into the information that I have in front of me, and to get the questions answered that I have, and to have a better understanding if there are some issues that I see that we need to deal with. That gives us an opportunity to talk about those things and have a very robust back and forth discussion. In most cases, management interview can be accomplished with conference call. If a client wants me to be front and center, can certainly do that as well. But from an efficiency perspective, most of my clients, we do conference calls, and it tends to work out quite well. With regard to management, I look to the firm ownership to determine who I talk to. In some cases, if I have an owner that is, they're wanting to keep this valuation process very confidential and it's not a known process within the firm, then certainly I will work with that one person. So it's really up to the firm ownership to determine who is going to be involved in that management interview process. Once all of that has been accomplished, if there's any more information I need, I will generally ask for it at that point in time. And then it's, the ball is back in my court to, finish the analysis process, develop that indication of fair market value, whether that is a 100% control interest, whether that is a minority interest share or single share interest, or both. And then I will write the report. Once I have the report written and have finalized the valuation process and determined what that fair market value indication is, then at that point I will provide the report to the client, and then give the client a few days to review the report, and then we will set up a conference call so that if there are questions or if the client needs to understand how some of the information was developed, then at that point I am more than happy to answer any questions they might have.
Wow. I mean, I guess my simple question would be, how do you keep that all organized, Tracy? I mean, there's so many moving parts in evaluation. I mean, I'm just curious, what kind of normal timeline could somebody expect from this type of endeavor that you just described?
Generally, it somewhat depends, Randy, on the workload that we have at the moment. But generally, it's about a 4 to 6 week turnaround time from the time that I have all of the information in my hand that we've asked for to get started. And I will tell you that is a really critical piece of the process. It's very difficult to do evaluation when there's missing information, because typically what happens is you can only get so far, and then you have to put it aside and you're working on a different client. And then when that information comes in, it's almost like you have to kind of start over again to, get your mind back around this particular client that you're working. So we like to have all the information in front of us when we get started, and once we get started, it's about a 4 to 6 week time frame.
Wow, which and you get me thinking right now, because we're in tax seasons. It's almost the same way when you go to your tax man. It's like you can't come to your tax man with half of your information because there's no way for them to complete your taxes. It's the same way here that a firm can't come to you for evaluation project and then have you be able to complete it with missing information. So
precisely, it's just an impossibility to sometimes, we can't fill in those holes. We're relying on the client information to do that. So I will say that while it sounds like a daunting task to put together all of that information, it's really those business documents that ownership is going to have in place, somewhere within the firm, and so it's just a matter of gathering up that information, and then of course just taking a little bit of time to respond to the questionnaire, I would say that on the questionnaire side that I probably 50-60% of that is probably in the head of the client. They know that information, without having to go reference other documents. But, when we get to client breakdown, that sort of thing, I have a lot of my clients that are very highly organized that have that information already. So, they will just put a note in the questionnaire that says see Exhibit A, and so they'll send me a beautiful spreadsheet that's got that information in it. And when I get that, that really puts a smile on my face, because it makes my job easier in terms of being able to understand that client very well, with having a really nice complement of information to work with.
Yeah. Well, no, that makes sense. That was actually going to be my next question about what really, in this process that you undertake on a regular basis, day in and day out, what really drives you, when you finish a valuation job and send that report to the client, how does that make you feel?
Well, Randy, I will tell you that one of the reasons I love what I do is because I get to work with different people all of the time, and I get to learn about them and their businesses. And I love that process, and I really like getting to know people. The way I look at what I do is every single time that I issue a valuation report that is providing a client with the value of the company that they have probably spent years building, made massive financial investments into, and have poured their life into, that it's for a purpose. And in a lot of the cases, like I said, a lot of the times it's for an owner to exit their firm. So I take it very seriously, because the way I look at this is, when I am issuing a fair market value indication for a firm, that is ultimately going to be a decision-making tool that is going to change somebody's life. Mm-hmm. And, so I want to be sure that we're doing very good work to provide clients with the best information possible to help them make good financial decisions for their futures.
Wow. Well, there you have it, folks. That is valuation in a nutshell. I can't think of a better way to wrap it up with that. But your enthusiasm and excitement for this subject matter and for this area of our organization is palpable. And I'm just getting it listening to you. I'm getting excited, and I'm not. You would see my top dresser drawer. It's a mess. It's in disarray. I'm just not the guy to organize all that stuff. But I am really good at consulting and recruiting, so that's why I do what I do with this company. But obviously, you have a certain set of skills and abilities that allow you to make sense of chaos in some instances when you do these valuations. And so I think that's certainly a commendable talent. And I'm certainly glad that you're on our team and you're able to do this successfully for so many of our clients. And I hope that this podcast, more than any other, will help give people some information about the valuation process so as to demystify it and help them to realize, A, why they need to consider having a valuation if they haven't had one, and ways that you can use evaluation and how your organization can benefit from it. So I think that's really great. So I thank you so much for sharing that. I told you earlier, Tracy, we're doing something new here on the TZL interview series. We want to go deeper for our audience and learn who the real Tracy Eaves is. And so we have a couple of simple questions that we'll end our interview with, and hopefully we'll have some fun in the process. So are you ready?
I'm ready.
All right. What was the last book that you read?
Thinking back about the last book that I read that wasn't pieces and parts, maybe on an airplane, was probably the Diana Gabaldon series. And I think the last book in that series that I read was, I think it was called Echo in the Bone. Her books are fantastic, and I have been reading her books for probably 15 years. And, she takes 3 or 4 years to write a new book, and they're fairly extensive when they come out. But love that series, and that's probably the last book that I read cover to cover that I can think of.
So is it like murder mystery, murder and intrigue, something along those lines?
It is actually, it is historical fiction involving time travel.
Oh wow.
And
Okay.
it's fascinating.
Okay. Okay. Well, that's very cool. You know, it's funny. My wife and I watched this show called Timeless on I think it's on. I don't know if it's on ABC. I don't know what channel it's on, but you know, because I was a history major in college, and anything that has to do with history, I always love to immerse myself in. But that show's kind of cool because it deals with time travel and it deals with history and how, you know, if people that are in the future go back in time and mess things up, it creates that ripple effect that can ultimately mess up the timeline. So I think
Yeah, absolutely.
yeah, I think that's
Absolutely.
really interesting.
Well, in fact, if you liked that, you're going to have to look for the series called Outlander. Outlander, I think it's on the Starz Network. Outlander is based on the Diana Gabaldon series of books.
Okay.
So
Okay.
you'll have to look for that one.
I will do that. I will do that. So speaking, you spoke of reading and traveling. Where did you go on your last vacation?
My husband and I took a trip to Estes Park, Colorado, and we did a lot of hiking and fishing in Rocky Mountain National Park.
Oh, nice. Nice. Did you catch anything?
Yes, we did. We had a great time. And that's probably one of my favorite activities is outdoors in the mountains, hiking, fishing. My husband's really gotten me into the whole fishing thing. So he has created a new little hobby for me that I really enjoy.
Oh, very cool. Very cool. Yeah, I love fishing myself, so that's great. A woman after my own heart. If you could binge watch one TV series, old or new, what would it be?
Randy, I really hate to admit this, and I will tell you, my husband introduced it to me, and it's called Shameless. I don't know if you know that series or not.
Look,
When
you know
I,
what? It's you're the second person that has told me that on this podcast that they watch Shameless and they're almost ashamed to admit it. And I
exactly,
think that's really funny. You know, that's hilarious. I will have
it,
to. I keep saying I'm going to start watching it. I just haven't. But Mark Zweig has said that to me. Christy Zweig Niehaus has said that to me. So I'm going to have to look into it. You're the third person. Usually, by the third recommendation, I need to take a closer look at it. So,
well, this is how I would describe it, Randy. When I first started watching this, I was appalled, appalled. But it's kind of like a train wreck. You gotta keep watching, and it was appalling. So you have to get your mind around the fact that this is who these people are, and there are going to be things that you're just going to go, why am I watching this? But you can't stop. There's something very addictive about watching these people go through their lives. So
yeah, you just can't look away. You just can't
you
look away.
can't look away. Exactly.
So that's funny. That's funny. Wow. Well, yeah, you know, Tracy, thank you so much for taking time out of your schedule to be with us on the Zweig Letter interview series. And I'm sure we're going to have you back again. We really, really appreciate you taking time out of your busy schedule to join us today.
I really enjoyed it. Thank you, Randy.
As a reminder, all Zweig Group media programs like this one are available um, both in both video and audio format. You can check us out online on iTunes, Stitcher, SoundCloud, just to name a few places that you can find and download this podcast. In addition, we really want to offer you a special gift, and we have a free subscription to the Zweig Letter newsletter. And you can get that subscription by visiting the website freetzl.zweigletter.com. And that is freetzl.zweigletter.com. All this information that I'm sharing with you, including contact information for Tracy, will be available in the show notes at zweigletter.com. And you can find out all you care to find out about valuation and everything that we're doing here at Zweig Group, as well as all of the past episodes of the Zweig Letter Podcast. So we really want to thank you so much for taking time to participate in this event. And we certainly couldn't do it without your participation, without the fact that we have so many people listening from all over the world, and the feedback that we get on how this podcast is making a difference for them and how they run and operate their design firm. We really appreciate it from the bottom of our hearts. So we just ask you to keep listening, keep spreading the good news from the Zweig Letter Podcast. And certainly if there's any information or feedback that you want to share with us, feel free to do so at any point in time. All of our contact information can be found online, either at zweiggroup.com or zweigletter.com. Again, this is Randy Wilburn, and you've been listening to another episode of the Zweig Letter Podcast interview series. Thank you so much, and remember, we exist to make you more successful. Bye for now.
Thanks for tuning in to this Zweig Letter Podcast. We hope that you can apply the Zweig team's no-holds-barred advice to your daily professional life. For a free 6-week subscription to the Zweig Letter, please visit freetzl.zweiggroup.com to gain more wisdom and inspiration, in addition to information about leadership, finance, HR, and marketing your firm. Subscribe today.